Okay, shalom to everyone. I would have come on earlier because I'd love to see all of you and to chat, and then I know as soon as we finish, you wrap it up and it's over. But there was something really, really impressive on TV, and they just finished it. So I came up. It was an update on the war in Lebanon, and so it was very exciting. I almost cried today because the commander of the army was giving orders to start the campaign, and it was very emotional, very very emotional. But first, I want to say something before. Um, Once Rachel and I were driving to the Negev, to the south of Israel, for a graduation ceremony of my granddaughter as an officer in the army. And at one of the junctions there before Beersheba, we saw a soldier standing there, and he was in uniform, and he didn't have anything in his hands. And we took him in the car, and he started telling us uh, uh, a story about how he had gone to the wall, the Western Wall in Jerusalem, to pray, and that all his things got stolen. He went to the bathroom and came out, his things were not there. Um, it was a real sob story, and like we felt really bad for him, and he needed 300 shekels to go for cancer treatment in a certain hospital where that specific treatment is private. And he was broke, and he didn't have time, and he didn't want to miss his. Anyway, we gave him money, and during the drive, he was telling us what he does in the army. And then I said to him, tell me something, are we in Lebanon now? And he said, we are deep in Lebanon, and we're doing secret things that nobody talks about. And then we let him out of the car when he got to the hospital, and we never heard from him again. We gave him our card, and you'd think he'd call, he'd say hello, he'd say thank you, how is his health? And my son Aaron said to me, this guy was a real con artist, and he was really, really working on you. And the money's not important. 300 shekels, 400 shekels, that's $100. I mean, if you guys see a person in uniform and the person is crying his heart out that he has no money, he has to go for cancer treatment, what are you going to do? Say you don't believe him? And anyway, so just now on TV, the Israeli army spokesman, Rear Admiral Hagari, started talking about the things that we have been doing in Lebanon over the past few months. And what they've been doing in Lebanon, very, very, I mean, it's not secret anymore. If I can talk about it, it's not secret anymore. But it turns out that we had special units going in certain areas in the south of Lebanon, right on the Israeli border. And what they were doing was they were checking out houses where in Lebanese villages, right on the border. And we had, it seems, prior information that something illicit was going on in these houses. So the Israeli troops went in, the special units, and they found openings in the floor, which took them down into tunnels, like Gaza. It's just in Lebanon, it's not sand. In Lebanon, the tunnels were like chiseled out of rock. I don't know if it was by North Koreans or by a German company or who did it. And they found tunnels in the south of Lebanon, which were a mile long, different sizes, and they did not necessarily cross the border into Israel, because as you know, about a year or two ago, we found 8 tunnels that crossed underneath the border into Israel. And these were prongs that were going to be used as entry points into Israel for Hezbollah terrorists. And Israel destroyed them. Now, what happened was many Israeli residents on the Israeli side of the border had been complaining to the army that they were hearing digging noises. And the army said, oh, it's nothing, it's nothing. But the army took care of it and found these tunnels, which were like a mile long under the border, going from one house in the Lebanese side all the way across the border into Israel. And I have to tell you, you guys know me. I'm an old man. I'm 75. In 1996, when I was in the Israeli Army spokesman's office, I was invited to participate in war games at the general staff level. And I'm just like a lieutenant in the reserves. But as you all may remember, I think I told this story, I had received a telephone call in November 1996, right after Netanyahu became prime minister the first time. And this was a telephone call. Actually, it was a series. It was 2 telephone calls over a period of 2 weeks, which I received. I don't want to say the identity. Actually, one of them doesn't matter. Messianic guy in Johnstown, Colorado, and he's with the Lord now. But he brought somebody who knew his stuff or knows his stuff. This is 1996. So we're talking about 30 years ago. And he gave me information on one condition, that I would call Netanyahu's office. I would call my commander in the IDF spokesman's office. I would call the prime minister's office, and I would give them the information. And the information I received was that Hezbollah was preparing to invade Israel across the border, overwhelm Israel, just as what happened with the Gaza Arabs on October the 7th, when the Gaza terrorists attacked our kibbutzim and moshavim and raped and murdered and chopped people's arms and heads off and burned entire families in the oven. I mean, completely crazy. This was the Gaza Arabs, but this plan was initiated by the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. And when I participated in the war games, it turns out that they said, we are waiting for the north of Israel to be overrun by an entire Hezbollah army. This was 1996. And by the way, I added this into my the second edition of my 4th book about the Bible Block Party. And Aaron has sent this to the publisher. We have a publisher which we hope will accept the book. We don't know yet if the publisher will or not, because I think they're left-wing and we're right-wing. But actually, the Bible Block Party is not left-wing or right-wing. The Bible Block Party is working to give Christians in Israel a voice in the Knesset. So, liberals should be liberal enough to accept what I'm doing and thinking, not just the right-wing. Anyway, so the bottom line is that Daniel Hagari, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, was showing movies of the different homes, of the different towns, showing the direction of the tunnels, showing what they found inside of the tunnels, and actually today, when the troops started going into Lebanon, the place was empty. There was no fight with anyone on the Lebanese side. They had abandoned the whole area. Praise God. So until now, I'm happy to report after 1 day of entry into South Lebanon that we have not lost any soldiers. Praise God. I'm telling you, I'm not a person who normally cries, but when I heard the commander ordering the troops to cross over the border into Lebanon, I really, really held myself not to cry. I got really, what do you call it, goosebumps. So we are now constantly on the watch with what's going on the TV. Also, another thing, it was hinted very, very clearly on TV 5-10 minutes ago that Iran is going to attack us. And this we got from the U.S. So the U.S. is standing with Israel to defend Israel if we get attacked by Iran. The only difference from the April 14th attack, where Iran launched over 300 rockets and UAVs, this time we are going to respond in kind. And I know the U.S. doesn't want us to do so, but we have to. the solution to all these wars, all these proxy wars in the Middle East, is to bankrupt Iran. Bankrupt Iran means destroy all the oil resources of Iran. China will not have its oil. And Russia today has warned Israel lest we attack Iran. So there are a number of things happening. There's a lot of tension now. There was a very big soccer game that was supposed to be played this evening in Teddy Stadium in Jerusalem. It was canceled. There is a very special Slichot prayer gathering at the Western Wall. I don't know yet if it has been canceled, but it's a very traditional thing just before Rosh Hashanah, which is tomorrow night.
All things at the wall, Avi, was canceled, it said.
Okay, so you know what? When you're, thank you very much, Susan. When you're so excited about all that's going on, you tend to overlook certain things. But any meeting over 1,000 people has to be canceled. And the Western Wall prayer meeting was supposed to be about 20,000 people. By the way, on a personal note, my son, Yaakov, works in the bank in Tel Aviv, Mizrahi Bank, was working. He was working the morning shift from 8 to 4. And around 12 o'clock, a missile crashed into Highway 6. Now, I don't know if you guys know what Highway 6 is, but it is now the main thoroughfare between North and South Israel. It is a toll road. It is a very good road. And one of the Hezbollah missiles fell on the southward lanes. The whole highway is shut down now. My daughter-in-law, Dana, was taking my granddaughter, the officer in the army, to the bus station. She has to get back to her base. And they were very close to where the bomb fell. The missile fell. My granddaughter, Shani, who's 10 or 11 years old, she was in school in Alfei Menashe, and they all had to go into the security rooms because the alarm was going off there. So anyway, so we are now literally on war footing. I'm talking about the civilians in Israel. The Israeli military is kind of saying, we really, really hope that Iran makes that mistake of attacking us. We have now a golden opportunity to take out, if not the entire nuclear program, put it back a few years. And so between that and the oil, and maybe 1 or 2 bombs in strategically located areas where you have the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, and Netanyahu said it yesterday, our plan is to start a revolution and bring about the end of the Ayatollah regime and restore the good relations that Israel had for thousands of years with the Persian Empire. We have had relations with the Persian Empire for 3,500 years. So we are really on the cusp of some really, really exciting developments. And what I have to say to all of you is please, please pray for the people of Israel. And by the way, that includes the Arabs. That includes other people who serve in the Israeli army who are not Jewish, because they're being shelled every day. The Arabs in the north of Israel are being shelled every day by Hezbollah. And pray for our soldiers who are now inside of Lebanon. And like I said before, they are purging the entire area of tunnels, of weaponries, hidden weaponries, and we're finding them. I can't understand the billions and billions of dollars spent by Iran to give the Houthis, to give the Hezbollah, to give Gaza, all these weapons to destroy us. And God is so miraculous that God comes to our defense and helps us to destroy these weapons. I don't want to talk about American politics. I know that the Democrat Party wants Kamala to win. But the question is, what's more important, Israel's survival or Kamala's victory in the elections? So, and by the way, Kamala said something really unbelievable. She said she was quoting the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon. And she said, there's a time for patience and there's a time for no patience. In other words, that she will have no patience with Israel. But the point is that does not appear in Ecclesiastes. Anyway, this is a sideline. The great thing is that we are doing what could have been done and should have been done over the last 15, 17 years. So I'm very excited, and I'm here doing whatever I can to help Rachel, who of course is always cooking away, cooking, and cleaning. And my son Aaron said to me, if I want to go spend the 4 days of Rosh Hashanah and Shabbat at Aaron's house and leave Rachel here alone, I said, I can't leave Rachel for a moment. And you have to pray for Rachel also. Her blood pressure is too high. She goes to the doctor, she's checked out and everything, but she's got something many years already about blood pressure. I understand her when she goes and watches on another TV silly Hollywood movies just to get her mind off of the crazy stuff going on here. But I'm a news addict, and so I'm constantly watching the news and being ready for anything that could happen. I have some more good news. I sent the copy of the second edition of my fourth book about the Bible Block Party. I sent it to Kinneret Mora Bitan publishers. I'm hoping they will read it and accept it. And I told them, I'm not offering you a book. I'm offering you a project. And the project will be to get the book out in Russian, Hebrew, and English. And it should be ready and in functioning before the elections. Now that the Israeli elections seem to be surer than ever in 2026 because of the entry of Gidon Saar into the Likud cabinet. So we are now up to, I don't know, there are different ways of looking at it, but it's not 64, it's now 68 members of Knesset out of 120. Our majority has grown. And we may have other people joining the coalition as well, like Avigdor Lieberman. So we will definitely go over 71, 72 out of 120. So the majority is Zionist, the majority is right-wing, the majority is seeking a total victory, purging Lebanon of the Hezbollah. We are in very good contact now with Christians in Lebanon, the Sunnis, and the Druze. And we are looking for ways to bring about new elections in Lebanon and to make sure that Hezbollah is totally routed, totally defeated. It might mean civil war in Lebanon. It'll be interesting to see the American and French reaction to what's going on. I just think it's a little funny that the French and the Americans say to Israel, ceasefire right now, which is completely ludicrous. This is like a surgeon operating on somebody very sick with cancer who's lying down on the operating table, and all of a sudden coming saying, stop the operation, ceasefire, for political reasons. So we are very excited that we're doing what we're doing. I would think that the Democrats should be smarter, support Israel, bring about a new government in Lebanon, which will be backed by the majority of the people. Israel will help them put Lebanon back on their feet again. And of course, the next stage that Netanyahu spoke about yesterday was that the people of Iran will soon have a new government. We will overthrow the Ayatollahs only if the U.S. allows us to do it, because the U.S. and Russia are trying to stop us. But the whole thing is that Iran is the head of the octopus. We chopped off the tentacle. Praise God, it's almost finished in Gaza. Praise God, it will almost be finished in Lebanon very soon. Praise God, the tentacle of Houthis has been chopped off. I mean, we delivered 2 devastating attacks on the Houthis shooting over 200 rockets into Israel, ballistic missiles. There are now Houthi soldiers in Syria getting ready to attack us. Pro-Iranian Iraqi militias, all of them near Damascus, ready to come and attack Israel. Syria is suffering a lot of attacks from the Israeli Air Force. Very, very exciting times. I mean, you know, for those of us who have been living in Israel for 55 years, like myself, there have been so many years of quiet that it's hard to believe that the Gaza Hamas are so stupid to do what they did. And actually, we would not have been able to do what we're doing now had it not been for the October 7th attack by the Hamas terrorists. It's kind of like, I hate to say it, because there are those people who always say that Israel was created thanks to the Holocaust, which is not true. But there is no doubt that the Holocaust did have a very strong input into Israel's declaration of independence and its independence war. And many people are saying that what we're facing now is a second stage of Israel's independence war. And so we're all in this together here. And of course, all of you who are watching the Zooms, I know you stand with me, stand with Israel. So, you know, just keep your eyes on what's going on. I don't know what to tell you. This is, it's still too early to talk very much about what's happening in Lebanon. But what I can say, this is from the Israeli TV just 15 minutes ago, half an hour ago, is that the Hezbollah built tunnels, like Gaza built tunnels, and they were ready to overrun the north of Israel, just as Gaza was trying to overrun the south of Israel. All this paid for by the Iranians, all this, and by the way, a lot of the money the Iranians used, they got from the Democrats, from President Biden, and before him from Obama, Clinton. All these presidents were forgiving because it fit the narrative of the economic process. This is going to stop. Maybe, God willing, if the revolution in Iran can take place and the good guys take over, the oil will start flowing again. But the crazy Ayatollahs who are punishing their own people, punishing, killing young girls who don't have the headscarf or headdressing or whatever, killing anyone who opposes dictatorial, tyrannical rule of Iran. All of these crazy people have to go, and let the people of Iran be free. Let the people of Iran, I don't want to say have democracy, but you know, anything is better than what Iran has now. And the Iranians know that the Israelis are infiltrated everywhere in Iran. And a lot of the Iranians, who are even top-level Iranian functionaries, they were agents of the Mossad, of the Israeli intelligence services. So we are in a very, very interesting time because a lot of these things cannot be revealed at this time. And I don't know if they'll ever be revealed. But Iran must be a democracy, and it'll be a big problem for the Russians. By the way, the Russians said that Israel must immediately cease fire in Lebanon and withdraw its troops. So on TV, one of the TV announcers said, "Oh, okay, you withdraw from the Ukraine, we withdraw from Lebanon." So that was so funny. I don't know. I think Russia is very pitiful at this time. I hope that I have no ill intentions towards Russians or Ukrainians or anybody. The war between Russia and Ukraine was totally misconceived. It was a total mistake by Putin. And the Russians will pay for it. The Russian population is shrinking. Many people have fled Russia in order to escape the army service. So Russia is dying. Russia is a dying country. Its people are fleeing. no one is allowed to say anything contrary to Putin or be killed also or put in jail. Same with China. You cannot speak up against the Chinese government. You cannot speak up against the Russian government, North Korea. I mean, these are crazy, crazy countries. And my only problem with the United States is the United States should be leading. The United States should be leading the world against these crazy countries. And instead, the United States is saying, no, 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 business is business. Israel should do what it's told. We will defend Israel, but we will not let Israel win. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So that's where we are right now. So I'm hoping that we will not have too much conflict with the United States or the other allies. We need all our allies, and we will probably be attacked by missiles from Iran in the next day or two. Don't forget, tomorrow's Rosh Hashanah. The Arabs, the Muslims, they love to attack Israel on the high holy days, whether it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, or Tabernacles. So the next 3 weeks are going to be very, very tense for all of us in Israel. Are there any questions?
I have a couple of questions, of course.
Of course.
Could you walk us through who all is in Syria and what they're doing? I mean, you've got Houthis, Russians, right? Presumably Israel on some level, but I'm just not clear on the current situation in Syria.
Okay, well, that is an excellent question. I need about 3 hours. I'll try to squeeze it in a half hour or a little more, perhaps. It has to be remembered that Syria was really the most hostile country to Israel for decades. Secretary of State Kissinger in 1974 forced Israel to hand over half the Golan to Syria. And you know what? Since then, we have not really had any wars with Syria. We have not had any cross-border battles with Syria. And the Syrians kind of take it for granted if Israel attacks terrorists on Syrian territory. Okay. Now, to answer your question, we have to remember that the population of Syria, which is about 20 million people, about 10% were Shiites, and it was the 10% that ruled the country. 10% Christian, 10% Sunni Muslims. That's 30%, which rules the country. Now, in addition, about 20% of the governing body of Syria, they were Sunnis, but they were allied with the Shiites, Christians, and Druze. 50% of Syria was fanatically Sunni Muslim. Sunnis hate the Shiites like Catholics hate the Protestants or Protestants hate the Catholics, as it was 500 years ago. Not today, you know, Catholics and Protestants kind of get along. That's nice. The only place where Catholics and Protestants don't get along is on the soccer fields in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, between the Catholic team from Ireland and the Protestant team from Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland Protestants wave the Israeli flag, and the Catholics wave the Palestinian flag. I mean, neither side understands anything about Israel or the Catholics, Israel or the Arabs, but there's kind of a strange parallel. So Syria, 20 million. Keep in mind, 10% is 2 million, which are Shiites. 2 million are Christian, 2 million are Druze, and then the rest are Sunnis, which is 70%. But among the 70%, 20% are pro-Ba'ath Party. Ba'ath Party, interestingly, Ba'ath Party used to rule in Syria and in Iraq. Saddam Hussein was also a Ba'ath Party. In Iraq, the situation was reversed. 20% of the population in Iraq were Sunni, 20% were Kurdish Sunni, and 60% were Shiite. So the two parts of the party, they hated each other, but it was the same ideology. So Syria, like I said before, 20 million. When the Arab Spring, supposedly Arab Spring, broke out in 2011, a civil war started in Syria. And I believe it was 5 million Sunnis were expelled, had to flee or face death under Bashar al-Assad. The situation in Syria, I mean, if you want to talk about genocide, then you're talking about 500,000 dead on the Sunni side and about 4 or 5 million expelled from the country. That also puts to the lie that there are countries that will not take in the Palestinians from Gaza. Because if they took in, 5 million refugees who were Sunnis from Syria, why wouldn't they take in Sunnis from Gaza? 1 million or 2 million. That is the premise of the Israeli government. So one of the things I wanted to say, which is very important, is that if you remember ISIS was Sunni. ISIS was in Syria and in Iraq, and they actually erased the border between Syria and Iraq in order to establish the caliphate. These fanatic Sunnis were the enemy of America. These fanatic Sunnis were the enemy of Russia. The only one who really liked these fanatics were Turkey, Erdogan of Turkey. And there was an agreement made between Bashar al-Assad and the Turks to allow the Sunni fanatics to go up to the northeast to an area called Idlib. Idlib is an enclave of fanatic Sunnis who, by the way, hate Hezbollah and hate the Shiites. And they're famous for saying, we hate you more than we hate the Jews. I mean, this is like the Protestant Catholic wars of Reformation. So Syria today is trembling because the alliance, what they call the Shiite bridge with Iran, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Houthis, these Shiites made a very stupid mistake. The Shiites are 15% of Islam, and the Sunnis are 85% of Islam. So what do we see? We see that if the Sunnis win, all the Shiites get annihilated. Who is Israel making peace with? The Sunnis. The Sunnis are the only ones who are ready to make peace with Israel, at least the moderate Sunnis, because the Arabs of the Gulf are not crazy like the ISIS type Sunni Muslims. Don't forget Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. He's a Sunni. 90% of Saudi Arabia is Sunni. But where the oil is, in the Persian Gulf, the population is primarily Shiite, and they are almost in a rebellion against Mohammed bin Salman. Another thing is that Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia is trying to open up the kingdom to Christian and Jewish and other tourism. Where? At the real Mount Sinai, the split rock. And I recommend to all of you to get any movie or any book you can get by Jim and Penny Caldwell or by the other group that has produced movies about this. He wants to turn this area into a Disney World, which I think God is not happy about. But the fanatic Sunnis in Saudi Arabia are not happy about turning the Mount Sinai, where we think it is at least, into a Disney World. And if Saudi Arabia, according to the American plan, establishes relations with Israel, the entire Saudi kingdom will be rent by civil war. The royal family of Saudi Arabia will be killed if the caliphate gets reestablished by ISIS. Same with Jordan. So what's going to happen is Israel is going to find itself between a rock and a hard place, because now that Shiite Islam is being dealt with, and like I said before, the Shiites are only 15%, but the Sunnis are 85%. So, I've been saying to myself all this time that the Shiites are really stupid, because if the Shiites would be friendly with Israel, they'd have an ally who would protect them from the Sunnis, from the ISIS. So you asked me about Syria. There you have it. You have an alliance of minorities in Syria working against the majority, which is Sunni. And now Israel and the U.S. are talking about working with the Sunnis in Lebanon and the Druze. And I spoke about the Druze in the last few weeks. The Druze are moving away from their alliance with the Shiites. I think we can have a good relationship with the Druze, because we have a good relationship with the Druze in Israel and in parts of Syria. I told you about Al Suwaida in the south of Syria, where the Iranian Shiites are working with the Syrian Shiites to attack the Druze. The Druze are calling for Druze brethren to come in from Israel and from Lebanon to protect them. So, we're in the middle of a tinderbox explosion, but we have to look what happens after the tinderbox explosion. How is that for you, Lori?
That was great, thanks. And what is Russia's role?
Okay, now Russia
in Syria
is a sinking ship, and you give Russia some straws, they're going to try to grab a hold of the straw. Straws like when you have a drink. And but you can't rely on straws. They cannot. The Chinese are fair weather friends with Russia. North Korea, fair weather friends with Russia. And if Iran, the fanatic regime, is defeated, and you have a pro-Western movement taking over Iran, that's one more nail in the coffin of Russia. And as an historian, I'm sad to see Russia go down like that. Russian people are good people, but the leadership is totalitarian over 1,000 years. Russia doesn't know what democracy or criticism is. There's a joke, I'll never forget, this is a joke from the Cold War days. This is 60, 70 years ago, that an American and a Russian the American says to the Russian, if I want to say that President Eisenhower is an idiot, I can say it. And so the Russian says to the American, you know what? I'm in Moscow. If I say President Eisenhower is an idiot, I can say it too. That's supposed to be funny. In other words, you cannot attack your own Russian leaders, but you're free to attack the Americans if you want. So Russia, I think any country that cannot have self-criticism and cannot have democracy, cannot have a right wing and a left wing and people debate with each other without fear of being killed, something's wrong with the country. Something's very wrong with Russia.
So specifically in Syria, they're supporting and upholding basically a proxy of Iran. Is that what they're doing in Syria?
An important term which you take into consideration is something called the Shiite Crescent. If you take a map and you connect Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and the Houthis, and the Shiite areas of Saudi and the Gulf, you see there's a crescent, like a moon crescent. And Syria is part of the Shiite crescent.
So the bottom line is their interest is in staying in sync with Iran. That's their interest in Syria.
Well, I think they're having second thoughts about it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Because you don't want to have an alliance with a country that's going to lose, and Iran is going to lose. It may be that after the Iranian leadership is defeated and you have a new Iranian leadership, it may be for the better for Syria too. The problem is Syria is not a democratic country either. So we'll have to see. We don't know. And the idea of what's happening now in Lebanon is that the Shiites will lose their power. So this is not good for Syria. because they're part of the alliance of Bashar al-Assad against the Sunnis. An interesting point, which you didn't ask, which you should ask, but you didn't ask, so I'm going to tell you, that the alliance in Damascus between the Christians and the Shiites is because minorities come together to defeat the greater enemy, which is the Sunnis. What's happening in Lebanon now is that you have some Christians who are anti-Shiite and they're pro-Israel, and then you have other Christians who are allied with the Shiites and against Israel because they're allies with the Shiites. Because the bottom line for them is they feel, the Christians and the Shiites in Lebanon, that they are part of Syria, and that the outcome of the final battle, civil war in Syria and Lebanon, is either the Shiites and the Christians win or the Sunnis win. If the Sunnis win, everybody gets killed. But I will say one thing: in Idlib, in the northwest of Syria, they were handing out, candies and sweets and celebrating the killing of Nasrallah. Because Nasrallah, during the civil war in Syria, massacred hundreds of thousands of Sunnis. So that's an interesting point for anyone who's interested.
No, we saw that on the news about them celebrating and passing out candy and everything. And those were
the Sunnis in Syria.
Yeah. And I mean, well, we have a debt of gratitude toward Israel for eliminating these monsters that inflicted such harm and disaster to millions and millions of people. They were truly the Hitler of this time.
Well, you have the Sunni monsters and you have the Shiite monsters. They're all monsters.
Yes, yes.
And the God is the same God, God with a small g. The God is Satan.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know. I sent the second edition of my fourth book to Kineret Zmora Bitan. And when I say that Allah is Satan and Islam is a criminal psychosis, they might disqualify my book for that reason. I might have to go, and publish the book like I did my first 7 books, publish the book privately.
Avi?
Yeah.
Where do the globalists fit into all of this?
You know what? The globalists will fight the Sunnis to the last drop of Shiite blood, and fight the Shiites to the last drop of Sunni blood, fight to the last drop against Jewish blood. You have to remember, the globalists are not religious people. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in religion.
No.
And I think the bottom line is they all think that all religions should be banned.
Yep.
So I'll tell you one thing. I mean, there's a God in heaven, and he's going to judge the globalists, because the globalists are stirring the pot here, causing everyone to fight everyone.
Avi, do you separate out the effects in Israel today with Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38 and 39?
Many people do that, and I can see where they get that idea from. Yes.
Do you separate them out, Avi? I'm just curious how you look at it.
Well, I have to tell you, I would say that my book, which I just sent to the publisher, I don't talk about Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38, but I would say yes, this could be a partial description of the Psalm 83 war. Ezekiel 38, I think, is going to appear in my next book, which will be about the Battle of Lepanto and our ultimate war with Turkey, because the Turks, we're talking about petty cash here. The Turks are 70 million, and there are 200 million Turkic Muslims that are part of the former Soviet Union. They all have Turkish citizenship if they ask for passports. 270 million. That's a lot bigger than the few millions or tens of millions of Arabs. So the grave threat to Israel is going to come from Turkey and its Turkic brothers.
Thanks, Avi. I think I first heard about that years ago. Actually, it may have been from you that there's this disparity, this discrepancy between the 83 and Ezekiel, and how certain people look at those two events.
Well, people are saying that 83 talks about Israel's neighbors, which is what we are seeing, except for Iran. Iran is not a neighbor. The Armageddon war is the Turks, who are not bordering on Israel. By the way, Erdogan of Turkey is saying that Israel wants to conquer all of Lebanon and Syria, and even southeastern Turkey. I got an email or text message from someone watching. He may be watching now also, and he said to me, you know, what do I think about the Kurds? And you have to remember that the Kurds are living in 5 different countries, and they do not have a state. So there are 20 million Kurds. There are, I think, 5 million Palestinians altogether. I know the roles are inflated. Let's say 5 million Palestinians. And Jordan is a 70% Palestinian. So there is a Palestinian state. Gaza is a Palestinian state. Judea and Samaria, so-so. The Israeli Arabs, so-so. Lebanon, Syria, they all have Palestinians. So really the Palestinians deserve 5 states. I'm saying that in a joking manner. And the Kurds were 20 million, including southeastern Turkey. So there are people in Turkey who are saying that Israel is going to invade Turkey eventually. They don't say and form a Kurdish state, but Israel has always had good relations with the Kurds. The Jewish people who came to live in Israel from Kurdistan, there were cases of anti-Semitism, but primarily the memories of the Jewish and Kurdish neighbors were good memories. I will add one more thing. It's something that nobody talks about. Southwestern Turkey, bordering with Syria, is Shiite. And the Turks, who are Sunnis, not only do they hate the Kurds, they hate the Shiites. And so the Shiites in southwestern Turkey can't open their mouths or say anything. They will be slaughtered by the Turks. That's an interesting point. You know, the Shiites are in grave danger of being annihilated by the Sunnis.
I wanted to say something. When you said that the what do you call them? I'm trying to think what you call them. People, ISIS hated Russia. Now that clicked in my mind that the guy who tried to assassinate Trump, he was recruiting ISIS people to fight against Russia in Ukraine. So now that makes sense to me, you know.
Well, the ISIS people, don't forget, Russia invaded Afghanistan in 1979, and the Afghanis defeated them. Just as Biden fled from Afghanistan, the Russians also fled from Afghanistan. So it's always a case of the enemy of my enemy is my ally. So that's a good point. But what I have been hearing is that this guy wanted to assassinate Trump and had 3 crypto bank accounts. Was an agent of Iran. So he was an agent of the Shiites, not the Sunnis. Maybe he was an agent of both.
Yeah, well, ISIS was Sunni, you said, right?
ISIS is Sunni and Iran is Shiite.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Russians want to get rid of Trump, then it would make sense to work with the Iranians, get money from them, and attack Trump. Praise God, it failed.
Avi. Uh, Netanyahu in his speech talked about this alliance with Saudi Arabia, kind of a rail and pipeline corridor between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, I guess. And this kind of fits in with what the globalists are doing all over the world. They like these trading blocks, like the USMCA and NAFTA, before that, NAFTA, the European Union and Asian Union and South American Union and African Union and so forth. How important is this to the globalists? In other words, do they have a vested interest in Israel's survival as a country in order to build this free trade area of the Mediterranean, and they might even let Israel do whatever it needs to in terms of taking out Iran's nukes or whatever to make this happen?
Okay, firstly, I have to tell you something. The Iranians started their nuclear program while the Shah was still alive. Israel was the country that helped Iran to start the nuclear program. What happened, which is something that happens in totalitarian countries, is that when the Shah was a totalitarian, was overthrown, and then President, not Clinton, I'm having a senior moment. Who's the president of the idiot?
Carter, wasn't it Carter?
Carter said, "Oh, Ayatollah Khomeini is a Democrat and he believes in democracy." And Jimmy Carter was so stupid, and Zbigniew Brzezinski was so stupid, and so, if you play soccer, this was a self-inflicted goal by the President of the United States. The Shah should have been back. The Shah should have had his people in power after he died. So when the Ayatollah came in, all of a sudden the nuclear weapons that Israel helped to start with the United States support became anti-Israel and a threat to Israel's existence. If indeed the Ayatollah regime is removed, it might not be the end of the nuclear project, but if Iran is becomes an ally of Israel in the West, that might indeed fit the global alliances. Regarding Saudi Arabia, I would be very careful, because there's a term which you should all remember: the shifting sands of the Middle East. And the Middle East has a lot of shifting sands and shifting alliances. And one of the fears that I have personally, let's say there's a happy ending, and Netanyahu succeeds in building a railway which would connect India and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf and Israel and Europe. That is definitely a globalist plan. Is it a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. But if the ISIS people take over, kill the king of Saudi Arabia, kill the royal family in Jordan, reestablish the caliphate. Instead of Syria and Iraq, this time the caliphate will be Arabia. Then that is a venture which will be down the drain. I would say we have to be very careful with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia also says on and off that there is no deal with them until there's a Palestinian state. So guess what? There's not going to be a deal with them.
Well, about the Palestinian state, the European Union and the US and UK and UN, they all seem bent on still imposing this Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria. I mean, what are they thinking? It's like they can't be that stupid. It'll just end up like another Gaza if Israel totally pulls out, right? So what is the possibility of that happening in terms of could Israel ever be pressured? This is immense pressure. They're all talking, the globalists are all talking about a two-state solution. They refuse to give that up. So would Israel ever give all of Area A or some of Area B under total Fatah control and have it become another Gaza? Is there a danger of that? And a related question is, does Israel control the weapons going into the Palestinian Authority territories, or are they rearming?
Oh, they're definitely rearming. There is a lot of smuggling going on through Jordan. Jordan, I don't want to say that they are a part of it, but the Jordanians are not really capable or able or willing to stop the flow of illicit weapons from Iran coming across the border, smuggled into Judea and Samaria. The bottom line is, I don't know if you've been following the news, but they're calling on the complete withdrawal of Jewish people from Jerusalem. Now, if that's not crazy, I don't know what crazy is.
Who's they?
The globalists, the United Nations.
No, I didn't hear that. I mean,
listen,
I don't doubt it, but
I'm a news addict. I'm following all the news media. This is from the United Nations.
okay.
That 500,000 Jews in Judea and Samaria should be uprooted from their homes. For what? Will there be a peace agreement? Never. Will they recognize the Jewish state? Never. So it's shadowboxing of some crazy people shadowboxing with each other.
Well, that was the original plan. Plan was for Jerusalem to be an international area. So who knows what the globalists had in mind? Maybe they want that to be the headquarters of a new religion. There was I don't know if you heard, there was Joel Rosenberg, he's a prophecy buff. He said that a friend of his, somebody he actually knows, was part of this meeting of rabbis and imams and some politicians, fairly high-level meeting in Israel, to talk about building some kind of house of worship for all nations. It sounded like some kind of ecumenical, it wasn't the third temple, or it wasn't the Jewish temple. It was sounded like some kind of ecumenical temple. And maybe this is what the globalists have in mind. They want a world religion for the whole world, because they want a new world order, an economic order for the whole world. They need a religion as a glue to hold it all together. And they've always wanted Jerusalem to be the center of it. I mean, if you look at the British Mandate, the Peel Commission report, the 1947 UN partition plan, they all had Jerusalem as an international center zone.
Well, the question of an international zone is a moot point because the Arabs didn't accept anything. Don't forget, in 1936, the negotiations about the Peel Commission were on a very, very small, narrow strip between Tel Aviv and Haifa, and the Arabs rejected it. Every different offer we made to the Arabs was rejected. So the question of Jerusalem was rejected, and it was settled at the end of the barrel of a gun. We had Israel's independence war, and we've been having war after war after war. I have to tell you something. We had a very crazy guy as prime minister. His name was Ehud Barak. And he met at White Plantation in 2000 with Arafat. And you know what? He said, let's stop horsing around. We'll give you everything. Take everything. Establish your Palestinian state. We'll give you East Jerusalem. Did Arafat accept it? No. Arafat didn't accept it because Arafat knew if he accepted it, he would be assassinated. And so the second Intifada started right after that, and 3,000, 4,000 Jews and Arabs were killed. Listen, when the God of Islam is Satan, there is no way you can have any kind of ecumenism, any kind of joint relations with them. And one of the things that drives me crazy, my family's from Argentina, and my father grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and there was a Catholic priest that would round up all the kids who were playing soccer in the street, take them to the church for breakfast. And my father was saying, this is the kind of guy I like. This is like Pope Francis. But Pope Francis said that the annihilation of Hezbollah is illegal. The annihilation of Nasrallah was illegal and immoral. And you know what? This Pope goes to Damascus or to an Islamic mosque anywhere, kisses the Quran, kisses, says we serve the same God. Complete nonsense. Allah is Satan, and Islam is not a religion. It is a criminal psychosis. So I don't believe that there's any way we can have an ecumenical meeting point with them. In the news yesterday, the Islamic leader in Jerusalem said, or was it Mahmoud Abbas? He said, only the Muslims have any rights on the Temple Mount. The Jews have no rights on the Temple Mount. I have to tell you, I'm not a religious fanatic or something. I had a very sweet Christian lady came to Israel last week. I took her around. I took her to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I took her to different places. We went to the Western Wall. And then as we came out of the Western Wall tunnel, a guy yells out, Avi Lipkin! So I turned around. It was Gidon Ariel. Gidon Ariel is a good friend of mine. He has a program called Root Source. He said, Avi, we're going up to the Temple Mount. Want to come? I said, okay. So I went up to the Temple Mount, and they said, take off your shoes, because in the mosque area, you have to be without shoes. And we went around, walking around the mosque, and prostrating and praying with permission of the police. This is the second time after Tisha B'Av that as Jews, we could legally pray on the Temple Mount. The Muslims are going nuts because they say they're the only ones that have rights on the Temple Mount. And I'm not saying only the Jews should have rights at Temple Mount. I'm saying it should be ecumenical. There is no ecumenism in Islam. I'm just saying, they've developed a new way of talking in Israel. They're saying if you support ecumenism, you're talking American. And if you talk war in Lebanon, you're talking Middle East language. And the big debate is the Israeli generals who are globalists following orders from Washington. They don't speak Hebrew, they speak American. They do what the generals are telling them in Washington. So when these ecumenical people say they want to, have an ecumenical house of prayer and everything, I have to tell you, there's something in America, I don't know if you heard, did you ever hear of Chris Lam?
Yeah.
Chris Lam is basically saying that Allah and God are the same, which is complete opposite. Allah is the Satan. But if you're a pastor, if you're a Christian and you have financial problems, if you go to the Muslims, they will pay off all your debts if you pray on Friday and you pray according to the Islamic way. And there are churches in America that are falling for this. So there's no good guy here. There's no buddy system. It's you get money, you're bought out, you do what you're told. There is no such thing as ecumenism. Ecumenism means surrendering to the Muslims. And no matter what you do, not you, no matter what one does to say, okay, let's be ecumenical, doesn't work. Islam is the only system. That's the devil.
You made an interesting comment about how the globalists are stirring the pot. They seem to want everybody fighting each other, and it doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
Well, I stumbled on I don't know if you've ever heard of the historian Carroll Quigley. He wrote a book called The Anglo-American Establishment and Tragedy and Hope. And he was kind of like a historian of the roundtable groups that Cecil Rhodes started in Great Britain. And Milner was the main leader of that after Rhodes passed away, I guess. And he was an extremely powerful man. He was like the David Rockefeller of the chairman of the British establishment of that time, right? And Quigley had access. He was kind of like an insider. He said he was allowed to look at the papers and secret records of this roundtable group who wanted to expand the British influence and so forth. And he writes in the Anglo-American Establishment, he says about the Balfour Declaration, he says, this declaration, which is always known as the Balfour Declaration, should rather be called the Milner Declaration, since Milner was the actual draftsman and was apparently its chief supporter in the War Cabinet. And Milner, Quigley also says about Milner, the mandate, meaning the British mandate of Palestine, was set up also in terms drafted by Milner. And then he says that Sir Reginald Coupland, another member of the inner circle of the Milner Group, is reputed to be the chief author of the Peel Report of 1937. So he was a very powerful figure. And so I was following, somebody had pointed me to a House of Lords transcript, and I looked it up. And in June 27, 1923, this is 6 years after the Balfour Declaration, shortly after all of the mandate paperwork had been established and so forth, he said, quote, he stood up in the House of Lords saying, "I was a party to the Balfour Declaration. My firm conviction is that you cannot have either an Arab government in Palestine or a Jewish government in Palestine, but you must have in that country some neutral power with a capital P, which will keep the balance between the different races, and which, without allowing any injury to be inflicted on the Arabs, will allow the Jews also to settle in the vacant spaces of their ancient home, as long as they provide, as they are willing to provide, the means of developing those districts and enabling them to support an adequate new incoming population." I thought this was interesting because the intention of the British in creating Palestine seemed to be always to have this, to never allow Israel to have a secure country with defensible borders like every other country in the world, but it would always be dependent on this neutral power, he called it. Probably he meant the United Nations, the League of Nations at that time, or later the United Nations, to kind of be the ombudsman to keep the peace between the warring factions. And to me, this explains a lot why the globalists never allow the Israel to win a war, to defeat the enemies. They want Israel to be at the mercy of the globalists and do whatever the globalists want. I mean, one thing that really strikes me as odd is the United Nations forced Syria to withdraw from Lebanon after the Lebanese civil war. They forced Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait after Iraq invaded Kuwait. But the UN did nothing about when Jordan invaded Judea and Samaria and annexed it. They didn't call for the withdrawal of Jordan. They didn't call for the withdrawal of Egypt when Egypt conquered Gaza. It seems like they want to reduce Israel's territory to bring it more in line with Milner's original vision. Anyway, your thoughts on that?
Well, as Kissinger said, Henry Kissinger said, we have to let the Israelis be cut down to size. I don't know if you heard that one.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to remember also, all these quotes that you're giving prove why the Jewish state is so important, because 6 million Jews died in World War II, not only because the Nazis killed them, but because you had a president like Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who had a Jewish speechwriter and advisor by the name of Rosenman, Samuel Rosenman, a Jew from America who did everything he could to attack Israel and to not defend the Jews in the Holocaust, let 6 million Jews die. Horrible, horrible, horrible. The British did not physically kill the Jews, but because they didn't give visas, so the Jews were locked into Nazi-occupied Europe. I'm not defending the Germans, but in January 1942 at the Wannsee Conference, the Germans realized that the Americans and the British and all the others, Canadians, nobody would take the Jews in. And it was a burden on the Nazi economy. So the Nazis decided to confiscate their wealth and kill them. And that's what they did. So we realized the intentions of the globalists. And, President Biden, he said, don't. The don't is not for Iran and for Syria and for Lebanon. The don't is for Israel. I have to tell you, I know, Ari, this is your first time participating in this Zoom, but I once spent a few visits in the Pacific Northwest, the pastor was a former submariner before he became a pastor, and the commander of the submarine said to him, "What would you do if you were commander of the submarine and you were given orders to launch a nuclear torpedo at Tel Aviv?" And the pastor said, he started laughing. So the captain said, "Why are you laughing? That's a serious question." He said, "Well, firstly, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that Israel will be nuked. And secondly, I wouldn't want to be on that submarine because God would take out the submarine." And they threw him out of the Navy. And the captain of the submarine eventually was, I don't know, head of the Sixth Fleet or important guy in the Navy. When he retired, he became a CEO of a Saudi corporation, and he converted to Islam. I mean, you got people in the U.S. military who convert to Islam, and they're ready to launch nuclear strikes in Israel. So Israel, what?
Pardon me, I just coughed.
Oh, okay. So I'm just saying that Israel, and I reported this to my commanders here in the Israeli army, that America cannot be trusted. There are anti-Semitic people, there are Muslim people, there are neo-Nazis, there are all kinds of people who do not have the interests of Israel or the interest of God as their foremost interest. So I do believe, yes, there is a globalist threat. I do believe there cannot be any kind of ecumenism with Islam when Islam says kill every Jew on the face of the earth. This is just as bad as Nazism. So my whole life has been building an alliance with Christians. It has to be a Judeo-Christian Western alliance, Western civilization and democracy. And that's why I created, I don't know, Ari, we've never talked personally. You seem to be a very interesting person. I created a political party in Israel, which has not gotten any seats yet, 1 out of 40 parties. And we're the only party that gives Christians slots as candidates. I don't know, I'm 75, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I mean, I'm healthy, but, you know, God can take any one of us at any time. But I have a feeling there's going to be a Holocaust in the States. I believe many, many Jews and their Christian or non-Jewish spouses will move with them to Israel. We have to deal with this. You know, we have to get ready to double and triple our population. And our borders are going to double and triple also. Not because we want to double and triple our population. It's going to happen because the enemies of Israel have their hearts hardened by God. And they attack us, and they attack us, and they attack us. We didn't want Gaza. And President Biden said don't. We didn't want to go into Shifa Hospital. President Biden said don't. We didn't want to go into Khan Yunis. We didn't want to go into Rafah. We didn't want to go to Philadelphia Road. We took all of Gaza. We are grinding to this day. We're grinding down the Hamas. God willing, we will find our hostages and get them home. Most of them alive. We don't know. Maybe they killed all the hostages. We don't know. We did not want to go into Lebanon. We were there already 3 times. We don't want to be in Lebanon, but God set it up in such a way that we have no choice but to go into Lebanon. And President Biden says no. Then you have Iran threatening to wipe us off the face of the earth with nuclear weapons, and Biden says no. I don't understand how this person can be called the president. But your description is correct. This is globalism. Globalism means 6 million Jews were sacrificed in World War II, and another 6 million will be sacrificed again. Lori, are there any updates on Gaza and the hostages? The answer is no. The only thing I can say is we're still looking. The Israeli army is doing the best it can. I think that there are 2 things which could bring about a solution to the hostages crisis. One is all the humanitarian aid going into Gaza has to be controlled by Israeli military government and not by Hamas terrorists who rob and steal and then sell the humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Israel has to control the humanitarian aid. And the second thing, if Iran is attacked and taken out by Israel, then and Lebanon, Hezbollah, maybe Sinwar will see that it's a little more logical for him to take a deal, go live in some other country, go live in Russia, go live in China. It'll be a little harder for Israel to kill him because he knows that we're going to get him. Do I think Sinwar is alive? I don't know. He could be. He's hiding. He's very purposefully hiding. Listen, Sinwar is the devil, and the devil is not stupid. The devil is very smart. So we don't know. You know what? I'm not in high places. Let the Israeli government decide. Let it do what it has to do. And God willing, we'll get our hostages. It's heartbreaking. I will say one more thing, though, that we are at war. Our total population is 10 million, including the Arabs. And if Israel loses, 10 million people die, including the Arabs. And we cannot sacrifice the security of 10 million people for 100 hostages. Unfortunately, it may be that's a price. I don't know. I hope it's not the price. I hope we can get them. We did everything we could to release our hostages. Some got killed by mistake. We got out 7. But what we have in Gaza basically is Gaza has been ground down. Hamas has been ground down. Now we're in the process of grinding down Hezbollah in Lebanon. And soon we're going to be grinding down the crazy Ayatollah regime in Tehran and liberating the Iranian people. Anyone who knows the history, the Iranians, the Persians were our allies for 3,500 years. And I believe in an alliance with the Iranians. And that'll be a big loss for Russia and China.
Avi, we keep hearing year after year that Iran is getting close to having nuclear weapons. How close are they really? And are you confident that if Israel really needed to take them out, they could destroy the Iranian nuclear program? Or are they just buried underground in some mountain so deep that Israel can't have access to them?
You're right. You're 100% right. We can attack certain targets in Iran and perhaps delay the Iranian nuclear project by a couple of years. I heard something yesterday, I don't know if it's true or not, that the Iranians already have 9 nuclear warheads. The problem is they don't have a delivery system. So they're working on the delivery system. And, but I will say another thing also. We have a newspaper in Israel called Yediot Achronot, and Yediot Achronot said a few months, like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, that if we went into Lebanon, we would lose 15,000 people, 15,000 civilians. And all these Hezbollah rockets were taken out by an extremely successful intelligence operation. And they want to launch 10, 15, 20 rockets, they launch one. So God forbid, if Iranians launch a nuclear warhead at Israel, probably it will be taken out in the air or in the stratosphere. We are also waiting. You probably heard of the Nautilus. The Nautilus is supposed to go into action in December. But the Nautilus basically has the capability of melting or bending the nuclear missile. It will probably be deflected. It won't attack the target that it's supposed to attack. But it might fall somewhere else and explode. We don't know. But the Nautilus is going to be play a very important role if there's a nuclear confrontation with Iran.
Well, when the nukes explode in the air, that can be dangerous too. That can result in an EMP attack, right?
Yeah. And they might explode over Damascus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't wish it on Damascus. I personally would love to visit Damascus one day. So I don't know.
Right. How many losses do you expect in the IDF soldiers in this war in Lebanon now, and when do you think it'll be over?
I can't answer either of the questions, not because I don't want to. I don't have the information. I don't have the information. But what I can say, and our military commanders have said it, after 1 year of war with Gaza, our troops are battle hardened, they are experienced, we have fine-tuned our military machine, and at least for the first 24 hours, we have not lost anyone. So, God willing, we pray. All the synagogues are praying for our soldiers to come home safe and get this thing over with. We'll have to see. There's also talk in Israel that the Israeli representatives are already meeting with the Christians in Beirut and with the Sunnis and the Druze to find a way to fill the political vacuum in Lebanon. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I can't answer you. A lot depends also on what happens with Iran. And I don't have to tell you. You probably know already. You seem very intelligent and very well read. 80% of the oil and gas of Iran can be destroyed very easily in the way that the port of Hodeidah in Yemen was attacked. Israel can do it too. But President Biden said don't, because he wants to make sure the oil prices remain steady and the oil goes to China. So I don't know what Israel's going to do. I don't want to say thank God I'm not up at the top, but you know, if I were at the top and I knew what was going on, really, then I wouldn't even talk to you. I wouldn't be answering your questions.
Avi, who in your family is still in active service at this point? I mean, how many? You don't have to say who.
Well, at this stage, only my son, my older son, who's 49. And every time I talk about him, you have to tell him to censor it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, my son is the head of Lipkin Tours. The company still exists, but there's no tourism. And in order to be able to feed his family, he signed up for the army. He gets his salary. He gets based on what he has been putting into the system in Israel. And I don't want to say what he does, but he does a very essential work for the army. Oh, also, my granddaughter is an officer, a graduated officer course, and she is in a unit in the base up in the north. My younger grandson of Aaron, his younger son, Dror, is in the ROTC, the technical ROTC. So we have two grandkids in uniform, and Aaron is really in uniform. And I'm an old guy, you know. I don't want to say in Yiddish an old cocker, but I'm an old cocker.
Hey, Avi, it's Angela.
Angela, you've been so silent the whole time.
Yes, I've been listening very, very closely. Yeah, I just wanted to say, don't forget you're in our prayers and
Thank
your
you.
family.
We all need all your prayers, all your prayers.
But you know, there's a higher wisdom than the UN and all these people. They say we're going to do this, do that. Well, who's going to believe them? Not me. I believe the God of the Bible, who says, you know, as I was listening there, I was just thinking of Zechariah 12:3, where it says, all the nations that come against Jerusalem will injure themselves. And God will make it like that heavy stone. They won't be able to move the boundary. They won't be able to carve it up because God himself is not going to allow it, and he said so. So they can say this and they can say that, but they'll never be able to do it because he will come out. His anger will come up in his face and he will come out and deal with Israel's enemies. And that's how we pray for Israel. We stand on God's word, not on what the UN say or any of these other institutions. But we're watching them, and we've seen what they did in the UN. We're praying very much about that, and also about Saudi Arabia, who I believe have given a lot of money over to the Palestinians, and new aid packages coming in for them from the US. Yeah, we're just praying for Israel's success in the north, in Lebanon, and you know, day and night we're watching and praying and searching the scriptures, and that's we're not there. We can't, you know, we just some of us think we're in the spiritual IDF because we can't actually be in the physical IDF. But we wish we could do more for you, really feel for you out there and everything you're all going through. It's horrendous. But just want to assure you that many, many people in my circle that I'm involved with, we're praying for you. And I know there's a lot more groups across the UK as well. So I believe God hears our prayers. I think some of the things that should have landed on Israel and that didn't, there's just so many miracles to be thankful for. But it's still a very dangerous, dire situation. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to minimize anything. But just to let you know, we love you. We're praying for you. And that's all I can say really at this point. And watching.
I'm very happy. I'm very happy you came on. You made my day. And I know that God is listening to your prayers. And all the Christians and Jews should be always marching together for the good of Israel and also for the good of Judeo-Christian Western civilization and democracy.
Amen to that. Amen. Thank you, darling. God bless you.
Okay, well, I think I got 4 minutes till my next show. I think, Lori, we overdid it this time.
That's not a problem. There's no limit.
Now I've got to go to Odessa, Texas, and do the GLC program.
Yeah, you better get up and stretch your legs for a minute.
More important, I've got to do something more important than 875.